There comes a moment in every life when the weight of a decision can be felt in the very air you breathe. You may not see it with your eyes, but your spirit knows. It is the turning point, the crossroad where heaven leans close to see which way you will go. God's favor is not random. It is not poured out like rain on any field without purpose. It rests where there is obedience, humility, and trust. Every decision you make is a seed, and seeds bring forth harvests. Some seeds grow thorns, and some grow blessings that overflow into eternity. There are choices that heaven cannot ignore. When you choose righteousness over comfort, when you choose truth though it costs you, when you choose His will over your own desires, these are the moments when the windows of heaven begin to open. Do not think for a moment that God's favor is bought by talent or human strength. It is not. It is drawn like a magnet to a heart that says, Lord, I am yours, completely, utterly, without reserve. A decision to surrender is the highest invitation to His favor. When you choose obedience over comfort, you are stepping into a realm where God's hand can move freely in your life. Obedience is not simply about following a set of rules. It is the posture of a heart that says, Lord, I trust you more than I trust my own understanding. It is a decision that often comes with a cost. Comfort will always call you to the easy path, the one that demands little and risks less. But obedience may lead you into places where your faith is tested, where your patience is stretched, and where your own desires must be laid down. It is in those moments when the choice before you is between what feels good and what is right, that the true nature of your heart is revealed. Anyone can follow God when the road is smooth, but favor is found in the ones who follow Him up the steep and rocky hills, trusting that His way, though difficult, is perfect. Comfort is temporary. It soothes for a moment, but it cannot produce lasting reward. Obedience, on the other hand, is eternal in its impact. Every act of obedience is recorded in heaven and sets in motion blessings you cannot yet see. There will be times when obedience means walking away from relationships that hinder your walk with God. That decision will hurt. Your emotions will scream for you to stay in familiar company to avoid the loneliness of separation. But the comfort of compromise will never bring the peace that comes from standing where God has called you to stand. When you choose obedience in these moments, heaven takes notice. You may not hear applause in the natural, but the spiritual realm celebrates a child of God who values His voice above their own comfort. Obedience might also mean choosing integrity when no one is watching. Comfort says, cut corners, no one will know. But obedience whispers, do what is right, for your Father in heaven sees all things. You may think the decision is small, but God sees it as a declaration of your allegiance to Him. That choice, unseen by human eyes, will draw His favor because it proves you can be trusted with more. There will be seasons where God will ask you to step out into the unknown. Comfort will try to hold you back, reminding you of all the things you might lose, the security you'll have to give up. But obedience requires that you trust the one who calls you, believing that He knows the end from the beginning. Abraham left his homeland, not knowing where he was going, simply because God told him to. That one act of obedience unlocked a covenant that still impacts the world today. Comfort would have kept him in the familiar. Obedience made him a father of nations. When you obey God, you are telling Him, I believe your word more than I believe my fears. And that kind of faith moves His heart. It is the kind of faith that will open doors no man can shut, bring provision from unexpected places, and protect you in seasons of uncertainty. The path of obedience is not always lined with ease, but it is always covered with God's presence. And when you have His presence, you have His favor, and that is worth far more than the fleeting security comfort promises. Surrender without reserve is more than a spoken prayer. It is a way of living where every part of your being is yielded to God's will. It is not partial, not conditional, and not based on whether His plan aligns with your preferences. It is laying everything on the altar: your dreams, your fears, your possessions, your relationships, even your future, and saying, Lord, it is all yours. Many give God pieces of their life, but hold on tightly to what they value most. True surrender happens when there is nothing you withhold from Him, when even the thing you treasure most is released into His hands without hesitation. This kind of surrender is not a one-time event, but a daily choice. Each morning, it is deciding that your plans, no matter how well thought out, will bow to His direction. It is being willing to let go of what feels safe and secure if He asks you to. Sometimes God will ask for the very thing you think you cannot live without, not because He wants to harm you, but because He wants to show you that He Himself is enough. The blessings you release in surrender often come back in ways far greater than you could imagine, because God multiplies what is given to Him freely. Surrender without reserve also means trusting His timing. It is easy to say, I trust you, Lord, when His promises come quickly, but it is much harder when the waiting stretches on for years. In those seasons, surrender looks like resting in His plan without trying to take control. It is resisting the urge to manipulate outcomes or open doors He has kept shut. It is believing that if He is delaying something, it is for your good, and that His wisdom sees what your eyes cannot. There will be moments when surrender feels like loss. Letting go of control can be uncomfortable, even frightening, because it requires you to step out of the driver's seat of your own life. But in truth, it is in that place of release that you find freedom. When your hands are open, God can both remove what would harm you and place in them what will bless you. Holding tightly to your own way might feel like strength, but it often blocks the very favor you are asking Him for. Surrender without reserve is also a declaration of trust in His character. It is saying, God, I believe you are good, even if I do not understand what you are doing. I believe you are faithful, even when I cannot see the outcome. I believe you love me, even when the path is hard. That kind of trust moves the heart of God, because it shows that your love for Him is not based on circumstances, but on who He is. And when you live in this kind of surrender, you find a deeper intimacy with Him. Your prayers become less about asking Him to bless your plans and more about asking Him to align you with His. Your heart becomes attuned to His voice because there are no competing desires fighting for first place. His presence becomes your greatest treasure and His approval your highest goal. This is the life God can bless abundantly because it is a life completely yielded to Him with nothing held back. Choosing to forgive those who have wounded you is one of the most powerful decisions you can make to attract God's favor. Forgiveness is not a natural response. The human heart instinctively wants justice, repayment, and for the offender to feel the weight of their wrongdoing. But the kingdom of God operates on a higher law, the law of mercy. When you forgive, you align yourself with the very heart of God, for He is rich in mercy toward you, even when you did not deserve it. To forgive is to reflect His nature, and nothing draws His favor more than a life that mirrors His love. Forgiveness is not denying the pain or pretending that the hurt never happened. It is not saying that the wrong was acceptable. Instead, it is making a deliberate choice to release the debt owed to you, knowing that God is the ultimate judge and avenger. Holding on to unforgiveness is like gripping a burning coal. It wounds you far more than it wounds the one who hurt you. It poisons your spirit, clouds your mind, and hardens your heart. When you let it go, you make room for healing, peace, and divine blessing to flow into your life. This decision often must be made long before you feel ready. Feelings may resist, and your mind may replay the offense over and over, fueling resentment. But forgiveness is not based on emotions. It is an act of the will. You forgive because God commanded it, and because you desire His presence more than you desire revenge. Over time, as you continue to choose forgiveness, your emotions will begin to follow, and the bitterness will lose its grip on your soul. There is something supernatural about forgiveness. It breaks cycles of hatred, closes doors the enemy uses to attack, and releases God's hand to work in ways you could never accomplish on your own. When you forgive, you are stepping aside and allowing God to deal with the situation according to His perfect justice and mercy. And in that act of trust, you position yourself for His favor, because you have shown Him that you value His way over your own. Forgiveness also frees you from the prison of the past. As long as you cling to resentment, you remain bound to the moment of your hurt, unable to fully step into the future God has for you. But when you release it, you break those chains. You allow God to turn what was meant for harm into a testimony of His grace. Often, the very people who have hurt you become the stepping stones that propel you toward your destiny, not because of what they did, but because of how God used your decision to forgive. This kind of forgiveness is not weakness. It is strength clothed in humility. It is the power to rise above offense, to refuse to let someone else's sin dictate your spirit. When you forgive, you choose life over bitterness, peace over turmoil, and blessing over curse. Heaven notices. God's heart is drawn to the one who can extend mercy as freely as they have received it from Him. And in that moment, His favor is not just given, it overflows, because you have chosen to walk in the same grace that saved you. Giving when you have much is generous, but giving when you have little is an act of faith that captures the attention of heaven. It is easy to share out of abundance when the extra in your hand costs you nothing. But when you choose to give in seasons of lack, when the amount you release feels like it might leave you without, it becomes a declaration that you believe God is your source and your sustainer. That kind of giving is not just an offering. It is a statement of trust, a visible sign that you rely on His promises more than you rely on your own resources. In times of scarcity, the natural instinct is to hold tightly to what you have, to store it away for fear that there will not be enough tomorrow. But the economy of God is different from the economy of the world. In His kingdom, what you release is multiplied, and what you cling to in fear often withers. When you give in lack, you are planting seeds in the soil of faith, seeds that will produce a harvest in due time. It may not return in the exact form you expect, but it will return, pressed down, shaken together, and running over because God cannot be outgiven. Such giving requires a heart that understands everything you own belongs to him in the first place. You are not the owner, you are the steward, and a faithful steward does not withhold from the master when he asks for something, even if it means personal sacrifice. There is no gift too small in his eyes if it is given with a willing heart. The widow's 2 coins in the temple were worth more to him than all the large offerings given by the wealthy, because she gave out of her poverty and held nothing back. When you give in lack, you are also breaking the power of fear over your life. Fear says, if I give, I will have less. Faith says, if I give, God will supply all my needs according to his riches in glory. That act of generosity in hard times silences the voice of fear and amplifies the voice of faith. And faith is what moves God's heart. There will be moments when God will nudge you to give in ways that make no sense to your natural mind. It may be to bless someone who can never repay you, to sow into a ministry when your own bills are due, or to meet a need that is not even your responsibility. In those moments, the decision to give is not about the size of the amount. It is about the size of your trust. If you obey, you are proving that your confidence is not in your wallet, but in the one who holds the universe in his hands. Giving in lack also transforms you. It shifts your focus from self-preservation to kingdom-minded living. You begin to see opportunities to be a vessel of blessing rather than constantly worrying about what you will lose. Your heart becomes more like God's overflowing, generous, and willing to be poured out for others. And when your heart mirrors his, favor flows. Because God will always pour into those who are willing to pour out, especially when they give from the place where it costs the most. Faith that stands still is not passive. It is one of the most powerful positions a believer can take. It is the unwavering decision to trust God completely, even when nothing around you suggests that he is moving. Standing still in faith does not mean doing nothing. It means refusing to be moved by fear, doubt, or impatience. It is holding your ground spiritually, anchored in the promises of God, while the storm rages around you. This kind of faith is not shaken by unanswered prayers or delayed breakthroughs. It rests in the unchanging truth that God is faithful and his timing is perfect. There will be seasons when everything in you wants to act, to fix the situation in your own strength, to force open doors that remain shut. The silence of God in those moments can feel heavy, almost unbearable. But faith that stands still chooses to remain in peace, knowing that the absence of visible progress does not mean the absence of God's work. Often, he is moving in ways you cannot see, aligning circumstances, touching hearts, and preparing the path ahead. When you move too soon, you risk stepping outside of his will. But when you stand still, you allow him to orchestrate the outcome in the way that will bring the greatest glory to his name. This faith requires a deep intimacy with God, because only in his presence can you silence the noise of fear and uncertainty. You must know his character well enough to trust him without needing immediate evidence. The Israelites stood still at the edge of the Red Sea with Pharaoh's army closing in behind them. In the natural, there was no way forward and no way of escape. Yet God's instruction through Moses was simple: stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. It was in that moment of stillness, before a single step was taken, that the miracle began. Faith that stands still is often tested in waiting seasons. The waiting can feel like wasted time, but in God's kingdom, waiting is often the most productive place for your spirit. It is where you learn to lean on Him completely, to let go of your own plans, and to prepare your heart for what is coming. It is in the stillness that your roots grow deeper, so that when the breakthrough comes, you are strong enough to sustain the blessing. This kind of faith also disarms the enemy. The devil thrives on chaos, fear, and hurried decisions. When you remain unmoved, when you do not panic, do not lash out, and do not abandon your trust in God, you rob him of his influence. Your stillness becomes a declaration that God is in control, no matter what the situation looks like. It is a spiritual stance that says, I will not be moved by what I see. I will only be moved by what God has spoken. Standing still in faith is not easy because it goes against every instinct to solve problems on your own. It requires surrender of control and absolute confidence in God's faithfulness. But when you choose it, you position yourself for miracles that cannot be explained by human reasoning. God's favor rests on those who wait on Him, not with frustration, but with expectation. Those who believe that even in the stillness, heaven is working on their behalf. And when the moment comes for Him to act, His power will be seen so clearly that no one will doubt it was His hand alone that brought the victory. Every choice you make is a seed, and seeds do not remain hidden forever. They grow, they produce, and they shape the course of your life. The truth is, your destiny is not formed in grand, rare moments alone, but in the small, everyday decisions that often seem insignificant at the time. The direction you are headed tomorrow is determined by the choices you make today. Each decision is either building a pathway for God's favor to flow or creating barriers that block it. This is why intentional living matters so deeply. You cannot sow seeds of compromise and expect to reap a harvest of blessing. The decisions that shape destiny are often the ones made in private, where no one else sees or applauds you. They are the quiet yes to God when He whispers a direction that challenges your comfort. They are the humble no to temptation, even when no one would know if you gave in. Each time you choose God's way over your own, you are aligning your life with His purpose, and that alignment is where His favor rests. It's easy to think that only the big, dramatic decisions, changing careers, moving to another city, stepping into ministry, carry the most weight. While those are significant, the truth is the smaller, repeated choices often matter more because they shape your character. Integrity, honesty, kindness, discipline. These are built decision by decision, day by day. God's favor follows character, and character is the result of thousands of choices to live according to His truth. The enemy knows the power of your decisions, which is why he tries to influence them subtly. He rarely tempts you with something that looks like complete destruction at first. Instead, he offers small compromises that seem harmless. But over time, these lead you away from the path God intended. On the other hand, small acts of faithfulness, praying when you don't feel like it, serving when no one notices, obeying God in little things, open the door to greater responsibility and blessing. God tests us in the little before He trusts us with the much. Living with the awareness that your choices shape your destiny changes how you approach each day. You begin to ask yourself, will this decision draw me closer to God's heart or pull me away? Will it plant seeds of peace, joy, and favor, or will it plant seeds of regret and loss? This kind of intentional living doesn't mean life becomes rigid. Rather, it becomes purposeful. You start to see every moment as an opportunity to honor Him. There will be times when choosing God's way will cost you relationships, opportunities, comfort, even the approval of others. But every sacrifice made in obedience is an investment into a future shaped by His favor. The harvest may not come overnight, but it will come. Decisions rooted in God's truth carry His promise, and His promises never return empty. Over time, you will begin to see patterns. The consistent choices to obey, to walk in integrity, to love when it's hard, to trust when it's easier to doubt. All of these create a life positioned under the covering of His blessing. And once you've tasted the fruit of those decisions, you will never want to return to careless living. Destiny is not built in one moment. It is built choice by choice, seed by seed, until the field of your life overflows with the unmistakable evidence of God's favor. When all is said and done, God's favor is not a mystery reserved for a chosen few. It is the natural outcome of a life fully aligned with His heart. Every act of obedience, every moment of surrender, every choice to forgive, every seed of generosity and lack, every season of still, standing faith, and every daily decision to walk in His ways becomes a bridge that draws His blessing closer. Favor is not an accident. It is cultivated in the secret place of the heart, proven in the quiet tests of life, and displayed in the fruit of a life yielded to Him. The path to His favor may not always be easy, but it will always be worth it. For when God's hand rests on you, nothing and no one can stand against what He has ordained. Choose His way, and you will find that His favor is not just upon you. It surrounds you, carries you, and marks your life for His glory.